Hello, my friends, and welcome to a space where pleasure is treasured, relaxation is not what you think it is, and life firing on all cylinders is what we're about. If you are somebody who wakes up every day asking for way more, consider this your happy place. Welcome to the Creation of Living podcast. I'm your host, Heather Nichols. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Creation of Living podcast. I am your host, Heather Nichols, and this week we are here with the amazing and lovely Kalpana Raghuraman. Kalpana is an advanced access consciousness facilitator. She's a dancer and a choreographer and owns and runs a dance company in Europe and so many other things for which there are really no words. one of my favorite people in the world. Yeah, really happy to have you here today.
So happy to be with you, Heather. Really excited.
Yeah. So what we're going to talk about is, well, we'll see what we're going to talk about, but where the jumping off point is how to deal with people. And Kalpana has this really amazing capacity, I would say, and skill and awareness for moving with all kinds of different people and energies in a way that always creates greater for everybody involved, really. And I love watching you in action.
Makes people curious. What does that look like?
I know. Well, and it's one of those things that, is so dealing with people is one of the most challenging parts of being on the planet,
Yes.
And, and it can also be, I feel like it can be really fun too. It can be this real creative possibility, when you're willing to just like be present with the energy and know what people's points of view are and what they bring, to any situation, like an agenda or a need or a, perspective or whatever, or projection, and it's cool to be able to work with that, without necessarily even having to speak to it.
Exactly. Totally. Didn't happen. True. It's really that. And it's so much to do with awareness, because if you give yourself, in a way, the permission to be aware of what they're bringing, what they're looking for, what they're expecting, you can play with that, basically. You can use that to your advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that's been really fascinating to me with this whole play, exploration is how much I have to be like a space of allowance or like, to use an access consciousness tool, interesting point of view. Meaning like you don't have a judgment or a need or a projection or somebody isn't wrong or right. In order to really have a clarity of awareness of what somebody needs, wants, expects, projects from any given situation. And it's like when you don't make that wrong, you don't make them wrong, you don't make yourself right. It's really cool what can show up as far as like the awareness and the creative possibility.
Exactly. It's really that space that you're speaking about, where when you don't go into the right, like this is right or this is wrong or this is, I don't like this, even, you kind of limit what you can be aware of. But if you just have this broad perspective, like my perspective is, it's interesting. I'm not making it right or wrong, then I can have access to all the information that's there. But if I say like, I don't like it, this is this, then I literally go oof, and then I cannot access everything.
Yeah, that I don't like this. Like let's dive into that a little bit more, because not having the like presence or the, I don't know, self-awareness or whatever, to not have that reaction to a situation when it would be so easy to, that's a muscle for sure.
Definitely. And that's training. That's really where you do go, I don't like this, and go, oh yeah, that's not helping. and right, and catching yourself and going like, well, I can like it or not like it. That's not going to change this. But if I actually choose to be okay and like spacious, you're not accepting it, going, it's fine. And you're not like, I hate it. But if you're more like, if you start to see like neither of those extremes are going to bring anything, if I can actually, because when you go interesting point of view, that broader perspective is where you're not inside anymore and stuck in it. You actually take a step back. And that's where you actually have like the perspective from the hill in a way, this broader perspective.
Yeah.
And that gives you that space and that breathing room in a way to be like, okay, this is here. And but that is a muscle training truly, because we have learned and we have been, I would say, encouraged to have that first initial reaction. I like it. I don't like it. I think this is good. I think this is bad. We have been so encouraged to form opinions. We call it opinion, right? Like, I like it as an opinion. I don't like it as an opinion. And so there's so much automatic way of responding because we've been trained to do it. You have to have an opinion. What side of the camp are you on? What do you think? And if you go,
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, that's a flaky answer. That's not an answer at all. Come on, give it to me. You like it or not? It's so much part of society and the way we're brought up and raised.
Yeah. And that it's so wild how we use those opinions and those reactions and responses to define ourselves, and it's kind of like that, like you were saying, it's like a flaky response to be like, it's an interesting point of view, it's like that is, well, you got to take a side. Like you're nobody if you don't take a side. You don't, like, what do you stand for? Who are you? You
Yeah.
know, who am I? If I don't take a side, who am I?
And that's it. Who are you? You have to tell me who you are by your opinions. And if you don't have an opinion, well, there is no content to you.
Yeah, and it's almost like you're not to be trusted. If you don't have an opinion, like, how can I can't define you. I can't put you in a box, so I can't trust you.
Well,
I don't know
totally.
what you're going to do or what's going to come out of your mouth.
Exactly. So I have to be careful with you. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, very
And
true.
the tool interesting point of view, it is like my favorite tool in access consciousness, and I use it all the time. And I actually really saw, like, when I really got what it would create for me to use that tool um, really diligently. I was like, okay, I just made a demand that I was going to, um, and the way that it works for people who have never used it is literally like we've just been talking about, where you notice a reaction, you notice some strong something. It could be your reaction, your point of view, it could be somebody else's or both. And then you just get present and you go, interesting point of view, I have this point of view, or interesting point of view, they have this point of view. And you do it until you kind of like, it's like talking yourself back up to the top of the hill so you can have that broader perspective, talking yourself down out of the reaction, out of the opinion. And one of the things I always say to people is, the thing about this tool is that's most important to use when you really don't want to. It's like when you're like,
Yeah.
no, I want to have a point of view. That's when you actually really need to use it.
Hilarious and so true. When you don't want to use it, you want to use it.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
true. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's also, I mean, like you said, it's really like commitment to choose that, because everything is so reactive in this world and everybody's so reactive and so quick all the time quick on their feet to go to an opinion. Choosing that space, choosing that hold on, choosing that is really a different way of functioning, and it takes it's really a muscle training. The more you do it, the easier it gets, like with everything else, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the yield is so amazing, and
Um,
um, like you and I were at this art of creation class together years ago,
yes.
uh, and and that was the class for me. That was the moment. It was, I don't know, probably, what was it, like 2017 or something, a long
Mm,
time ago, and it was this really expensive. access consciousness class, like a lot of prerequisites, a very advanced class. It was 5 days,
Yeah.
and the whole class was about interesting point of view, basically, you know. And it was like, if you want to have the art of creation, if you want to be able to create anything, you have to get to interesting point of view. And it really clicked for me at
Mm,
that class, and I was like, okay, this is game on now. Like, if I want to be as miraculous as I
mm,
am, as
mm.
it can be, then this is going to be my one of my big tools, you know, for getting to that space. And,
Beautiful.
you know, with creation, it does involve people, no matter what you do, you know, even if you don't really work super directly with people,
You
um,
have to deal with them.
there are always people involved, you know.
Yeah, however much you minimize it, they're still going to be there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we take it a little, like a little further, you know, you facilitate classes on manipulation, and you're going to be doing a more advanced manipulation class in this summer with Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness. I'm so
Yes.
looking forward to that class.
Me too.
Um, and, you know, manipulation is one of those things that is just so judged in our world. It's such a bad word. It's such a bad thing to do. And my perspective on manipulation has changed so much from being in these conversations and the tools of access. So, talk a little bit about manipulation.
Yeah, definitely. Like if you hear the word manipulation, if somebody says you're manipulating me, you're like, oh my God, I'm doing the worst thing in the world, right? That's basically how it's seen. Making somebody do what they don't want to do for your own interest, your own agenda. In access consciousness, manipulation is actually something completely different. I would even say the opposite. It's actually being aware of the situation and inviting somebody to a possibility that they have not considered before. Being the energy to invite them to to that possibility. And so that's really like, it's like a seduction, it's an invitation. It's actually manipulating the energy to create that opening. They could choose it, they could not choose it, so it's not result. It's not like it worked, you manipulated, you didn't work, you didn't manipulate. It's really like that energy of inviting somebody to something greater. And like you said before, it's a gift for everybody involved. It's in the way we've learned manipulation. It's good for me, it's against you, but I'm gonna get you to do it and you won't even realize, and I'll get what I want, and too bad for you. And this one, it's kindness for everybody involved. So this energy of what do you need to be to invite somebody to that energy, to invite somebody to this possibility that they're maybe not interested in or can't even consider. That's the thing. That's the question. Sometimes that means you're quiet. Sometimes that means you need to be intense. Sometimes that means you're sorry. Sometimes that means you're whatever it might look like. And that is really the energy of this, which excites me because it's such an exploration of all that we are as a person. We're not just one thing, right?
Yeah. It's such a creative playground,
Yes,
really, you know, just
exactly.
that willingness to be whatever is required, like whatever energy is required or that you can use in the moment to create something greater. It's
Exactly.
like, and that really, like, you can't, you, again, with interesting point of view, like, you can't choose that if you don't have allowance, like if you judge manipulation or you judge being intense or you judge being quiet, you know, whatever it may be, then you won't choose that energy, but that could be the energy that would change everything.
Exactly. And it also requires interesting point of view to be aware of what's required.
Totally.
Right. First,
Yeah.
you require information, like what's required here. If I am like, I don't like this guy's always so intense and bossy with me, I'm already out of the information game because I've already judged it. But if I'm like, oh, he's intense, what is required here? What do I need to be here? Also intense, not intense, da da da. So that's the first step. And then, like you said, if I have like, oh, I need to be intense. Oh my God, I hate being intense. Hold on. What if I don't have to hate it? What if that's one of the things I can choose? And that, so you interesting point of view plays so much with this, goes hand in hand, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that how you said like that takes you out of the information game if you're reacting to somebody. Say
Yeah.
more about that.
Well, like I said, like if you go into like, I don't like this about them, then you are already shutting out all this information because you're only in the no, 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 no energy, right? And you
Mm.
can't be aware of what all the frequencies and vibrations and things that can help you actually. And if I go, oh, he's really intense, oh, that's just information. Me not liking it is going to just shut off the information that I have. If I go into reaction, I am literally again limiting what I can be aware of,
Yeah.
because I'm in that reaction mode. You know, when you get reactive, you get into some kind of a loop. But if you are, and so the information is out, you're out of that stream of information because you're in your own loop.
Mm.
Don't go into reaction. All the information is there and you are also there. Basically, when you do reaction, you disappear into some kind of a parallel universe of looping of what you think about that thing, you know?
Yeah, and polarity. I mean, that yeah, this is so cool because that like it really the awareness, like the self-awareness required is so huge and the like willingness to choose something different. It's that, like when you don't want to do interesting point of view, that's when you need to kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like backing yourself out of the fight, out of the reaction, it's and it makes me think of Gary Douglas, who's the founder of Access Consciousness. He says, you can either be right or you can be free. And that to me is like such a huge part of this. Like, really, when you get the freedom of not needing to be right, not needing other people to be wrong, and vice versa, there's so much freedom in that because then you can just play. I mean, I can think of so many times where I've used this,
Yes.
just been willing to be like, I'm so wrong. Can you help me?
Yeah. Yeah.
And people are
It
like,
works.
yes, I would love to help you.
Yeah, and it's like you said, if you don't go into reaction, you can play. But when you're in, I mean, who gets playful when they're reactive? I don't.
Yeah.
You know? It doesn't work.
Yeah, that's so true. That's
Yeah.
so true. So
Yeah.
are there any like I don't know, stories or examples or like from your life or anybody else that you've worked with around this that pop for you?
I mean, I would say my first very clear memory of when I just started Access Consciousness, and I was in this kind of, let's call it conflict for sake of drama, between this artistic director of a theater and myself, because I had a grant to do something, and I was selected for something, and he didn't want me to use the money for that, and I was like, what the hell? I finally got this opportunity, yeah, 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 and I was going to go have a meeting about it. So on my way to the meeting, I was like, okay, what would Gary Douglas say? What have I learned in Access? I had just started. And I realized, oh, instead of going and fighting, I required this interesting point of view tool, right? So I started to ask myself questions like, okay, what does this guy require from me? Oh, he requires me to be softer. He requires me even to be a bit more like sorry. And he's used to not such strong people in a way. So I was like, okay, I can do that. And that's the thing, I can do that. And it, because the energy goes like, well, hey, I'm a strong person, this is what it is, that's what we go, right? This is who I am. But I'm
Mhm.
so many things. I can be quiet, I can be soft, I can be even how can I sorry and a bit like, because I was like, oh, he just requires me to be a bit like, yeah, so blah, 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 blah. Oh, but I can give that energy. And that is where where we go into like, no, that's ridiculous. Da, 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 da. And I was like, yeah, but what's going to create most? That energy. Okay, cool. So I went to the meeting and he was like, kind of like had his boxing gloves on already, energetically. So I came into the room. He's like, yeah, yeah. So come sit. And then I just said, hey, just before we start talking, can I just say I'm really sorry if I've come on too strong to you. I'm just very passionate about this thing, but I not meant it personal, but I might have gotten a bit too intense. And he just was baffled. He just was like, what are you doing? He just got so shocked and he just melted like right on the spot. So we hadn't even started. And I just went, really sorry. I've been so intense, but I'm just so excited and so passionate. And really sorry if I have been rude or anything, but I'm just so excited about it. It comes from a good place. And then, like, that was it. He was mushy and soft. And then he was like, no, I understand. I know you've been working for this. And there was no fight. There was nothing because I gave him the energy that he required to be able to talk to me and not be in defense and not be in fight. That's like one of my greatest stories because it was such a clear pathway of what occurred, and it was one of the first. And I was like, oh my God, this stuff works.
I love that. Oh, that's a great story. So a few things from that that really pop. It's like, for one, I mean, if you just like, I love the example of that because it really shows how manipulation in this sense can be used to melt the whole situation into greater possibilities, greater outcomes. And,
Yeah.
people, when people have their boxing gloves on, when they're ready to fight, I think, we're so used to that, in our world, like functioning like that.
Yeah.
And when you show up and you're like, hey, I can be wrong. I'm going to put my boxing gloves down,
Yeah.
like I don't need to fight, then somebody, that other person is like, oh, thank God, I don't really like fighting either. You can melt people to where they start to show up as them, like with their humanity, and their like
Yeah.
willingness to be with you as, person to person, and that's one of my favorite things about manipulation is getting people to melt into them to
Yeah.
be with you. And someone has to go first if there's a fight.
Exactly. Exactly. Totally. And just like that also, like where we can stop saying like that's not me, you know, because we limit who we are by our definitions. Like, oh, I'm very talkative, I'm very quiet, I'm introvert, I'm extrovert, I'm bossy, I'm submissive. We have all these ideas of who we are, but every situation is going to bring out a different you. You're
Yeah,
not the same with your neighbor as you are with your father or you are with your best friend or your partner, right?
right,
It's all
totally.
you. It's all you. And so
Yeah,
it's also this willingness to like let go of these ideas of who you are. And you're not like, let's say, you're not attempting trees. You're not like being like non unfaithful to yourself. You're so
right.
many things. You're so many things. And if you give yourself that chance, then there is so much that's available. I know in India, for example, my dance work has been the best training ground for interesting point of view, because there's so many people, so many energies, so much that interesting point of view has been such a fantastic tool for me, to apply it and to train myself, and also to see, like you said, that the yield is just incredible and very, very, very beautiful and strong.
Yeah,
Like, and like in India, sometimes if I'm too soft, they'll be like, push over, don't listen to her, she's pathetic. And I
yeah,
need to, that was like, oh my God, but and it's like, no, if I'm not bossy, they're not going to listen to me. They're just going to be like, yeah, 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 cute girl. So
yeah,
I needed to like choose that energy, be like, hey, I require this at this time. I need the lights there. No, not now. Do. And then suddenly, oh, she's the boss. And
yeah,
that's what I had to step into. And that is also a manipulation because actually you are giving them what they need because they need info how to make this work. And
yeah.
if you're like doing what you think is you, it doesn't work. And me being clear, they're like, oh, okay, I got it, this works, da 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 da. So it's really this willing to be changeable in a way in that situation to what's going to work for everybody.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many gems in that. Yeah. Well, and the other thing I wanted to point out too is and this is so natural, like for you, for me, for people who use the tools of access consciousness a lot, and because one of the main tools we have is asking questions.
Yeah.
And so, you go in India and you have this awareness of, I need to be a little more bossy and, direct and clear. And you're also not, that's not a conclusion. You're not like, I'm in India, I'm going to put on my bossy suit, You're
Uh,
like, so, or like you were talking about with the guy that you met with, you're on the way to the meeting and you're asking questions, so really going, okay, so what is this person's point of view? What's their agenda? What do they need? What do they desire? What do they require? What do they need to prove? All kinds of different questions, that you can ask, or like what energies could create more in this situation, you know? And
Mhm.
again, when you have the space of allowance and interesting point of view, and you don't have to show up in any particular way, you have lots of choice with how you be. Then the awareness of that will come. There will be so much more awareness of that. Kind of like when you were talking about getting out of the reaction, you know,
Yeah.
and that the asking of questions without looking for an answer or answering them yourself, you're just putting it out there to the universe, you know,
Yeah.
is it's a huge part of this because it
Yeah.
just that's where the awareness comes that you might not have otherwise had.
Absolutely. And it's really also where you have to, I mean, you don't have to, but you're invited to not be in control in this contracting, angsty way, you know? It's where you
Yeah.
can relax. That gives you the awareness too. That gives you the space also to be what's required.
Oh man. Yeah.
Right?
Yes, being out of control. Most people's, you know, not their favorite, but boy,
Exactly.
does that work too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Because that too, the control thing is somehow a reaction, which again gets you out of that objective space. I'm going to call it objective, but it's like the space, right? And this where you can really look and be like, hey, what's required here, and being asking questions. When you, a lot of times we want an outcome, and
Mhm.
that is in a way of reaction, and it keeps you limited. But if you can be like, hey, what's gonna work here is already not a specific result. Like
Yeah.
what's gonna work here is a very different question than what do I need to do to get what I want, which is so much
Right.
more limited. And
Yeah.
how many times all of us have we thought we wanted A, we ended up getting like whatever green, like not even a letter,
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I love green. I would have never asked for it. So it's like, you know,
Totally. All the time, all the time.
yeah. So
Yeah.
asking what's going to work here is like one of my favorite questions in those situations.
Yeah, that's great. Well,
Yeah.
and for me, one of the things that I've seen so much too is that like I like myself so much more when I'm willing to just not have to be anything, you know, and when I actually am willing to like work any sort of situation and be the energies required to create something greater, no matter what happens. Like I come out of that situation being like proud of me and excited by the creative possibilities that I'm willing to be and use and explore, you know. And
Yeah.
that is like one of the greatest gifts of this whole thing. But what it has been for me is it's not even creating X, Y, and Z or changing this person. It's like who I get to be. And I don't
Mm,
have to be right. I do get to be free.
that's beautiful. It's really beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Love it. Great, Heather.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Good.
we could go on, and we won't. But you have some classes probably like in your shop.
Around
You have
this
something
topic.
coming up. I know you have the manipulation 201.
Yeah, right now
Very
that's the only thing, but I have a bunch of stuff around this topic in the shop, like dealing with
cool.
family, dealing with people, all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, this really is is a conversation that kind of like weaves its way into everything, you know,
Exactly.
because it's relevant everywhere, you know,
Mhm.
parenting, relationships, business, even with ourselves, with our bodies. I mean, it's like everywhere, you know.
Everywhere.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
So, so we'll link that in our in the show notes, and as well as the manipulation 201 class is mid to late June. I don't remember the exact dates. Do you?
21st and 22nd of June.
Cool.
Yeah.
At the Castello di Castel Borgone in Italy, which is one of my favorite places in the world. So excited to be there.
Yes.
And it will also be online.
Mhm.
And the prerequisite for that class, I don't
It's
remember
an
what it is.
Access Foundation class.
Oh,
Mhm.
cool.
So,
Not very high prerequisite. Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah. And there is an Access Consciousness Foundation class, the Global Foundation, coming up
Hey,
in May, beginning of
love
May
yeah,
in
first week of May.
Prague and online. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Perfect.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Kalpana. Thanks everybody for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for the Creation of Living podcast. If this conversation was inspiring to you, share the love. To work privately with me or for info on my upcoming classes and retreats, go to heathernichols.com. Have a beautiful day, and remember that the world thrives when you do.